Welcome everyone, it's the Crypto Lark. Today I have the chance to sit down with the guys from Bancor. I have Eyal and Omri on. Guys, welcome.
Thank you.
Now obviously we have to jump straight into it. The question on everyone's mind, what happened? There was a hack. Give us the story.
Yeah, so a wallet that was owned by Bancor was breached, and that wallet had access to a few smart contracts on the network, and some funds were stolen from those smart contracts. And as soon as that happened, we immediately blocked transfer, and there was about $23.5 million worth of tokens stolen from the smart contracts, $10 million worth of BNT, and as soon as we discovered it, we actually froze the BNT, so we prevented $10 million of BNT from actually being stolen.
Mm-hmm.
And $12.5 million worth of tokens were actually stolen at the end.
That's brutal. That's brutal, guys. These crypto hacks, they keep happening, and you're such big targets. Anyone holding crypto, any of the decentralized exchanges, any of the centralized exchanges, everyone's being probed constantly, and it's a constant attack out there. And I can only imagine that you must be getting constant probing attacks trying to actually break into your system as well. And so what's the day-to-day security situation trying to prevent this from happening in the first place, but prevent it from happening again as well?
Look, I mean, we have top-of-the-line security systems in place as is, right? We have multi-sig wallets everywhere. We have the wallets that do the signing that are not connected to the internet. We have plenty of preventative measures already in place. The thing is, you know, these attacks are relentless, and these attackers are relentless, and they just keep trying until they actually find some hole. Since then, we've brought on 2 new security firms to actually help boost our security in places that we didn't know we needed, we didn't know existed. So we're pushing on all fronts, and it's the same thing on a private level too. It's not just on a company level. Every personal wallet is at risk. So make sure that your personal wallets are safe too. I mean, for all your listeners, all your viewers.
Oh yeah, and your emails and all this stuff. It's a constant in terms of being attacked. Now, you guys had been audited by QuantStamp previously. Are you a bit disappointed that they didn't find this bug in their audit?
No, I think first of all, there was no bug. There was no bug in the code that I think, securing such an operation, which today is quite large. Over 50 people are working on that, and you need to secure any aspect of it. And as the organization change and evolve, this is becoming an increasingly more complicated challenge. So it's almost like saying, so how can you build a car that no one can steal? And we see there's an arm race that has been happening, I don't know, past 50 years or so, with all kind of tools that prevent people from stealing cars. And still, people steal cars, and we provide more tools. So it's a kind of an arm race which is ongoing, and I suspect that it will keep on going for quite some time. However, I think, and that's a good link to the other hot topic that has to do with that with that event, which is, what about the social aspect of security? Does it make sense that there will be an entity that can do something about preventing theft, for example, like we did? And when you have kind of the right balance, because we moved from like completely controlled system to completely non-controlled Wild West, your money got stolen, bad luck, deal with it, and we moved very, very rapidly. And it's almost like we were traumatized by trust. But it's not that we were traumatized by trust itself, actually. This is a common misconception. We were traumatized by monopolized trust, that you have no choice but to trust that particular entity that happened to be, your central bank or your banking system. But you don't have a choice. And when you don't have a choice, then it's not really trust. And I think that this is, in the long term, that will be the protection against, again, those kind of things. If hackers will know that they will need to deal with a collective, with a group, with people, not just with code and bugs, then they might find it's much harder. And even if those things are not built into the code, you can do that socially like they did with Ethereum. We need to remember that Ethereum is a forked network after money got taken back from a hacker. And we can see that 90% of the members preferred the forked network. So while 10% say, scream, code is law, and 90% scream, do not steal.
Give us back our money, yeah.
No, just to also like to go back to the QuantStamp thing. QuantStamp, they scanned our smart contracts and found no problems there. So just to reiterate, the problem was definitely not with our contracts. There's nothing. There's no problem with our wallets. There's no problem with our contracts. Everything was secure on that front.
He wrote it has to do with the upgrade process, which is very, very challenging and tricky.
Again, it's that analogy. You're trying to drive your car down the road, but someone's actually trying to jump in and steal your car while you're trying to, get gas or something like that. It's a really, really tricky situation without a doubt. Now, moving forward, are you changing your approach to security? Have you thought of a way to prevent this from happening in future upgrades?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it's like this with any attack, right? You immediately get into extra defensive mode. You immediately have your radar up. We're looking in every direction and making sure that everything's locked down in every which way.
Nice. Now, this was out of the liquidity reserve. Is that correct? It wasn't. So this obviously it wasn't from user wallets, but it was out of the Bancor liquidity reserve.
Yeah. Let me explain a little bit how that works. So basically, we have so BNT, which is the world's first smart token, right? The token itself has the ability to be bought and sold from its smart contract. And what that means is that every smart token actually has a reserve of another currency. So for every BNT that gets produced, that gets created, somebody actually has to put BNT into reserve. So the total has to put Ether into the reserve of BNT, and BNT gets created. So the Ether that was stolen was actually from the reserve.
Nice. And so how much does that, I guess, hurt your business? I mean, about $23.5 million or so was actually stolen in Ethereum. Is that about the correct number?
We recovered $10 million worth of BNT, so about $12.5 million worth of Ether.
Okay, well, that's pretty serious still. So how much of an impact, did that set you back a few months, or were you prepared for such eventualities? Did you have a fund on the side in case this happened?
We need to remember that Ether lost 2/3 of its value recently. So, it's all people in the space, all ventures in the space, obviously, dealing with a situation where they're, I would say, war chest is constantly changing because they're very volatile. The good news is that, and I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years, the average venture in crypto raises anything between 10 times to 20 times more than the average startup that was VC funded. And I think that, that's also true for Bancor, but you can see it all over. So I think the good thing, we have a company here that got hacked in the day of their ICO. Their name is Blocks. It used to be called CoinDash. Good friends of ours. I remember I supported them when it happened to them. Now they support us. So it's really down the street from here, a few minutes. But the idea is that even though the entire ICO funds were stolen, they were left only with a pre-sale, and they're doing great. It's a lot of money. There's a lot of stuff you can do. I mean, the fact that you raise so much more gives so much more power to the entrepreneurs, and help them to deal with cases of high volatility, as we all see, and also in case of security breaches, because we see that happening again and again and again each time. And we actually had a blog post about it that called "Learning from the Dow."
Mm-hmm.
That blog post was all about how we are building the system that even if it's hacked, even if we have a security breach, we're not going to lose all the reserve, because that could be a very significant amount. We're not going to lose all of it. And because we implemented what we wrote in the contract, what we wrote in that blog post, then the damage was mitigated in this time. So we were already, this is the amount of money that we're risking, but we don't want to risk more than that. So it mitigated to some effect.
Yeah, go ahead. I was actually just going to explain a little bit about the DAO to anybody who doesn't actually know about the DAO hack, which was a hack on Ethereum. There was a smart contract with a vulnerability in it. Some attackers got in there and actually stole $150 million from this smart contract. And there was a big decision to be had on the Ethereum network by Ethereum holders whether or not they should allow that theft to occur. And eventually that's when the hard fork between Ethereum and Ethereum Classic happened. And Ethereum Classic now is, I think, roughly 2% of the market cap of Ethereum. Mm-hmm. Ethereum Classic was the people that decided that they should let the thief get away with stealing the money, right? So this guy stole all this money from the smart contract, really hurt the integrity of the network. But people that sided with Ethereum Classic said, you know what, decentralized, code is king, let this guy have it. And we see, I mean, most people sided with the thought that, these guys shouldn't get away with it. And mm-hmm. the ironic thing is Bancor is probably, I think, one of the largest dApps on Ethereum, right? And when Bancor instituted the exact same mechanism that Ethereum instituted, which is don't let the hacker get away with it, there's a surprising amount of backlash and misunderstanding.
Yeah, I mean, there was backlash back then in Ethereum. We all remember the people were very, very vocal, and I think that's just naivety to think that the best solution is that you release the system and then no one can ever touch it again. I mean, it's just, right. I mean, is that your first, computer program project? I mean, this is not how it works. You deploy something, you learn from that, mm-hmm. you get feedback, you see what's useful, what's not useful, what's working, you change it. It's an evolving. It's not like you develop something, yeah, it's launched, thank you, bye-bye, I'm moving to the next project. It doesn't work like that. Never did, never will.
It's an interesting debate, and I can really see both sides, because for the people who believe, hey, code is law, and well, they've got Ethereum Classic for that and a few other crypto projects as well. And I understand where they come from on that, because it does become a slippery slope. If Ethereum did it once, they might do it again, and you start to run into problems. But I realize in that situation, it was a theft, and that's where it comes in. And I think most people, except for the really philosophically minded, will agree, hey, why are we letting these thieves steal everyone's money? This isn't right, when we can do something to stop it. And I feel like we enter a conversation into levels of decentralization, the idea of complete true decentralization versus obviously like Federal Reserve super centralized decision making. Most people fall somewhere in between. And so in terms of how decentralized Bancor is, where would you put yourself on the scale?
I want to put, instead of a scale, I mean, there is obviously a scale, but I think there's also what I call the decentralization dimension. Mm-hmm. And there are many dimensions, because some people will say, if a currency is if the wealth is not distributed, then it's not decentralized, because Ripple, I don't know, too many coins are held by too few accounts. Or some people would say, oh, it's not decentralized because it's running only on 21 computers and not on 10,000 computers, mm-hmm. and that makes it not decentralized. We have a different way of looking at it. We think that the problem that is being addressed by the, let's call it the decentralization movement, is the ability to build systems that cannot be controlled by a single entity centrally, like mm-hmm. like Facebook, like YouTube, like Amazon, like Google. Those are all databases that are like the banking system. They're proprietary database, and they give enormous power to the owner of the database. If you look at it, the top 5 companies in the world, their main asset is their database, their proprietary database. And that's give them a monopolistic status. That's not good.
No.
Monopoly is the opposite of choice, and it stifles evolution. This is why big companies cannot create anything. They only startups create, and they buy them because they lose their creativity. They become like this mute giants.
And it just absorbs smaller companies.
And this aspect of decentralization, which is you cannot control it. Why can't you control it? Because I can fork it. I like to call it the threat of forking. You know, even if I'm not going to fork you, the fact that you know that I can fork you would keep you at bay.
Don't fork me, please. Oh, but it's very true.
So you know, when we're talking about decentralization, for us, this is the most important aspect of it. If it's like open source code, can you own an open source project? Yeah, you can own, you can run it, you can manage, but anyone can fork it and compete with you, and that allows it's like, you know, it's like genetic mutations, if you will. I mean, that's what allows evolution to occur. The fact that people can have different opinions and can try different things. I mean, look at all the brands of Linux. This is all forking. You know, even, you know, I like to say that Christianity is a hard fork of Judaism. You know,
there you go.
You try different things.
What are the original forks?
And by the way, much more successful one in terms of number of users, right?
I love it. I love it. That's great. It's my favorite quote of the day. Now, by the way, I'm a big fan of Bancor, and we haven't actually talked so much about what you guys actually do yet, but I've used Bancor quite a few times for exchanging, and it's super easy, and I really, really appreciate that. So anyone who hasn't actually tried Bancor out yet, ignore the FUD, ignore the BS going around, and here's the information, here's what actually happened, and it's a great service. I really appreciate Bancor, and I've used it a few times. I'll use it again without a doubt. You know, talking to you guys now helps, I hope at least for the audience, reinforce that you're there, you're taking it very seriously, and you're very proactive in the situation, which I hope everyone really, really appreciates. Now, I did want to change the conversation up here a little bit because I think there's a very interesting thing that I want to talk with you about as well, and that's EOS.
Yeah.
Bancor is an EOS block producer. I was looking today, you're number 9 or 10 or something like that on the list currently. So that's pretty impressive. How did that process happen? How did you get in there and become a block producer?
Yeah, I mean, we've been pretty actively involved in the EOS project for a while. And you know, the future of Bancor is cross-chain, right? I mean, our big mantra is freedom of currency. That's and freedom to create currency, and we don't think that's, you know, for us to achieve that, we have to be blockchain agnostic, right? So we have to look past what's currently running, like you said, like Ethereum being the only one that's really working today. EOS is, you know, the new player to the space. So first of all, when we saw them, that immediately they have a lot of features that are really helpful for us. No gas fees, right? No free transaction, front running. There's a lot of really big features on the EOS.
You know, it's a lot of stuff that we deal with Ethereum.
Right.
I mean, Ethereum is, you know,
upgradability to smart contracts. There's a lot of really nice features in EOS that excited us. And I mean,
I think, you know, Ethereum is groundbreaking. It's like, you know, it's almost like the Palm Pilot of our industry. I'm just not sure it's the iPhone, right? So, you know, they're working hard, they're building stuff, and that's great. And I wish them luck. I think that, you know, we're going to see several different attempts, and there's something so revolutionary about what EOS is doing, because for the first time, the end users have a say in how the network is ran. Which is not the case with Bitcoin, just not the case with Ethereum.
And we've seen the negative repercussions of that too.
Yeah, and they have a say, and I think that it's almost like, you know, we used to have monarchies in the world, and maybe that was a good thing, because as people, we're not educated enough and involved enough to understand anything about governance. But as time progressed and we started, the Gutenberg printing press revolution brought a lot more knowledge to the people. All of a sudden, we saw that dynamic started to change, and all of a sudden, people are involved in their own governance. And I think that evolution is very likely to happen in the crypto space as well. When you're going to have a group of people that, I can decide, and because I'm sentient being capable of making a moral decision about what's good for me and the group, then all of a sudden you don't need to burn, enormous amounts of electricity and waste all this expensive hardware just to prove something that you actually proving that you wasted money. And that's how you protect between,
you get more money because you prove you wasted the money.
It's like a king wanted to, how do I prove that I'm king and I'm strong? Let's build a pyramid so everyone knows that I have a lot of slaves, I wasted a lot of money, and that will give me my authority. Yeah, but now we have democracy. You don't need to build pyramids to establish a proof of work. It's a proof of support. And I think that as a social experiment, it is absolutely fascinating. And I really cannot understand those who oppose even experimenting that and trying that. And I'm actually a big believer that this is a good chance to work. You never know with those things, but it does make sense. But definitely worth trying it.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I love the experimental governance behind EOS, and I've come out criticizing EOS on different things because that conversation should happen without a doubt. There should be a critical conversation happening, but I like where they're going. I like the idea of experimental governments. Let's throw ideas out there and just see where we go, see what happens. And that's powerful without a doubt.
Definitely. We came from a currency monopoly reality just until recent. I mean, if 5 years ago or even 10 years ago, I would tell you, look, I want to create a currency that works for every person in the world. You would tell me, oh, you need to be a country. Set up your own state, make it respectable among the other people, and then you'll have your own currency, or at least a network of airlines, in order to. But today it's like cost few dollars, and you deploy smart contracts, and you have a currency that anyone with any smartphone around the world can use. I mean, think about what happens when we enable anyone to create videos. Not just watch videos, but also to broadcast them to the entire world. What did that do to our culture? Actually, we're looking at it. I mean, you're an online video celebrity because of that opportunity, and that changes the culture radically. I'm not interviewing right now to CNN. I'm talking to you. And what would it do if you allow people, just as you allow anyone to broadcast video, if you allow them to issue a currency? What would that do to our culture and to our reality and to the way that we collaborate with each other? I think it would make it virtually unrecognizable in 10 years. I mean, if we jump to the future, 10 years to the future, we would not understand where we are because that changes not just how we transfer information, which is very powerful, but it also changes the way we collaborate with each other. The collaboration mechanism, if you will, itself, which is what money is changing. The way that we participate, the way that everything that built around us, the computer that we're using to talk, it's all built using this mass collaboration solution called money. And that the very essence of that tool and the very nature of that is changing. So obviously, we should experiment, we should try. We're out of the monopoly. It's like someone telling you, don't experiment with this kind of video. It's too weird. No, do it.
Do it. Experiment. Absolutely.
It's called low cost of failure. This is a term Clay Shirky is a great internet philosopher coined with in regards to blogs and podcasts and all that. It's the low cost of failure that makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
Because if it doesn't cost a lot to fail, everyone can try, and you're going to find creativity that was just not
easily accessible for you before you needed money and a shop and a factory and all this stuff. Now, I got to ask the question, though, when are we going to see cross-chain exchanges happening on Bancor? When are we going to see the EOS to Ethereum cross-chain exchanges happening?
First of all, it's more difficult than it sounds. It sounds like
just do it. Just flip a switch. It's easy, right?
Connect the two things together. So it's not so easy, but we're really close. And
we are going to do Ethereum to Ethereum soon. So the cross chain, start with two chains in the same brand. That's kind of the first step.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to do that between the two Ethereum blocks, mainnet and some side chain, as part of what we're doing in Kenya, actually. Because guess what? The transaction fee in Ethereum is like their weekly wage.
It's crazy.
So they cannot pay the transaction fees in Ethereum for even transfer. So it has to be a side chain.
To go into that real quick, in Kenya, so we've actually created a community currency system out there, or we partnered with Grassroots Economics, and they actually injected a new currency into a few different communities in Kenya, and just by injecting this new currency and allowing people to have more physical money, they can actually provide more services. They could actually, the big disparity was there were plenty of people that wanted work, and there were plenty of people that wanted work done, and there was just no way to connect the two.
Yep.
So that's all we did was airdrop a bunch of money out there in their own unique currency, and now we allow it easily convertible to their national currency.
I love it. That's amazing. I remember actually covering this story when that was first announced. I thought, wow, what a fantastic idea. And we've seen this with little regional currencies in towns and cities and small regions around the world. And I thought, this is awesome. We're actually using cryptocurrency to have a real impact in people's lives and give them those tools. That means of exchange is very important because not everybody is going to want a new table or a bag of fish. So you won't always have this barter possibility. But if you have a medium, then it becomes very easy, of course.
Yeah, it's like, I always say that the two most important inventions in human history are writing and money. And they actually do the same thing. So, we transfer information to each other. We transfer valuable things to each other. We transfer value to each other. And writing actually disconnect transmitting from receiving the information, because we don't need to be on the same place at the same time in order to transfer knowledge. I can write now, you can read later somewhere else. It solves a problem that is actually called the double coincidence of one. You can read about it in Wikipedia, but it's like very old ancient concept. And money do exactly the same for trade. So without money, we need to be at the same place at the same time and to do this barter deal. And essentially, I'm giving and receiving in the same time, in the same transaction. What money does is actually separates the two. So I can just give now, get money in return, and then use that money to get something I need, from somewhere else, and make the whole process asynchronous. And when you make a synchronous process to asynchronous, you get the same effect that you get with text messages. What happened with text messages? Much more efficient way to communicate when between busy group of people, because you can read whenever you get to it, and even if it's a voice message, that works too. But as long as it's asynchronous, then it's much easier to coordinate in that matter. And I think that this is what money, this is what writing and this is why those are fundamental. And our roots were actually in community currency. We actually built and deployed our first community currency on 2012, and we built it, we deployed it in 2013, and we did a lot of experiments with local currencies in order to get to a very important conclusion, which is that it doesn't really help to provide people with their own currency. I mean, it does help, but it's not even close to the potential if that currency is not liquid. Because if it's not liquid, it's like having a local network that can be super useful, but not connected to the internet. And yeah, you can do emails and you can do calendars, you can do file sharing, but it's not connected to the internet. Think about how more useful it will become if it's connected to the internet. So that liquidity is that. Liquidity is the internet of value, because it allows you to move value between one form of one network, one currency, to another. And now I can move between, and that you have like a great financial network of the world where everything is liquid to everything, and a local currency, because it's so small, it's just disconnected from it. Now, Bancor protocol, the way that it works is that it provides liquidity all the time. So it guarantees liquidity. And thanks to that, it doesn't matter if it's a local currency with 20 people, it's always going to remain liquid. And the price, the value and the price of the currency will respond to, are people buying into that currency or getting out of it? And the ratio between those two would actually affect the price.
It's very interesting, actually. And I feel like a lot of people don't even understand what liquidity is, but it's so important to actually have liquidity. And that's why so many marginal exchanges really suffer. And anyone who can provide liquidity is really paving a good path in the market. Final question for you guys. How do you stay competitive moving forward when there are so many DEXs coming out all the time?
Yeah, let me answer that. I think, first of all, we're not a traditional DEX in that you go to a normal exchange and you buy and sell. You buy from another human being, right? The Bancor network is actually a network of smart contracts. So you're buying and selling from a smart contract.
And this is why it's so simple and slick, because no matching is required.
You don't need. I mean, I'm sure a lot of your. I'm sure you've seen these order books, right, with like the bids and the asks, and so that doesn't exist because people are buying directly from a smart contract. Like Eyal was saying about asynchronous exchange, right? So on a normal exchange, you actually have to find somebody willing to sell you the thing at the exact time you want to buy it. On Bancor, you have an asynchronous transfer of value, and it's the only one. It's very unique in the space, and I really think that with all these DEXs coming around, I really think the real competition here is inefficiency of transference of value, and if we can find a better way to be able to convert between currencies, it gives currencies that much more utility. So, you know, I think that's what we should all be working towards. Is you know, there's people that are working towards their own currencies and developing their own economies, and you know, the rest of us should be really working towards solving these inefficiencies, such as blockchains, you know, protocols of liquidity, all the things that are blocking us from achieving the world of decentralized and freedom of currency.
Yeah, I just want to stress that when we're talking about decentralized system, and think about Bancor Liquidity Network is simply a group of smart contracts that each of them is controlled by a different entity. So if you issue a token and you have a token relay that connects your token to the Bancor, it's your smart contract that connects. So it's a loosely tied, you know, a network of contracts that provide this, that creates this liquidity network. So, you know, saying competitive about that is actually has a very different meaning, because let's say there is another competitor tomorrow and they copied Bancor formula and they're, you know, building a liquidity network of their own. Since it's a decentralized, I can leverage their liquidity as much as they can. So the whole notion of competitiveness is like, what is competitive? Maybe the competitiveness is really about who provide the best user experience at every given moment. Because you don't have the same network effects that Facebook has. That, yeah, I go to Facebook because everyone is on Facebook. If Facebook was decentralized and use a blockchain and a decentralized database, then I can build my own front end to Facebook and show you the you know, and sponsor it or fund it the way that I think. Maybe not showing you ads, but charging subscription or whatever. But that creates an anti-monopolistic situation, and that's, I think, the most important thing about blockchain. Because just like the internet, you know, we had a lot of private networks before the internet, and then we said like, hey, let's have a decentralized network, and people are like, why? I mean, centralized network, decentralized network, what's the difference? Well, it's all the difference in the world. You know, within 20 years, we're all connected, audio, video, text, to all the information and to each other. I mean, it's all the difference in the world. But it's exactly the fact that it's decentralized, because monopolies cannot be created. I mean, the monopolies was CompuServe and all those. And today, we have a decentralized network, but we don't have a decentralized database. So the databases are centralized. So all the monopolies today are monopolies not of networks, but of databases, the Amazon, Google, and Facebook. And now we have a decentralized database technology. So, you know, interesting what will happen now. If it's anything like the internet, we're going to see a real change in you know, in how the market looks and who is controlling it.
Decentralize everything.
Yes.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to tell us about the recent events, but also to tell us a little bit about Bancor and the block producer and all that. So thank you so much for taking the time, guys.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure, great.